It was supposed to be the place where my grandkids would learn to ride horses, where Catherine and I would sit on the porch in our 80s watching the sunset over the Rockies. It was supposed to be Independence Day weekend, our 35th year hosting the family reunion on our Montana ranch. Instead, I was standing in my son's home office at 2 in the morning, holding documents that proved he'd been stealing from us for 3 years. I'm Robert, 65 years old, retired firefighter, third-generation owner of a 200-acre cattle ranch outside Billings. My wife Catherine and I built our life there, raised 2 kids, buried my parents on that land. The plan was simple: work the ranch until we couldn't anymore, then pass it to Brian and Sarah. Keep it in the family. That was the dream. I should have known something was wrong 6 months earlier. Catherine and I were in the kitchen, going through the mail like we did every morning. She picked up a statement from our bank, frowned, set it down, picked it up again. "Robert, did you withdraw $40,000 last month?" I looked up from my coffee. "What? No. Why would I do that?" She showed me the statement. There it was. A withdrawal dated March 15th. I didn't recognize the transaction. We called the bank immediately. The manager, Dennis, someone I'd known for 20 years, pulled up our account. "That withdrawal was authorized by your financial advisor," Dennis said carefully. "Your son, Brian. He has power of attorney on the account. Remember? You set that up 2 years ago when you had the heart surgery." I did remember. Brian had been so helpful during my recovery, said it would make things easier if he could handle bills while I was in the hospital. Made sense at the time. He was a financial advisor, after all. Successful practice in Denver. Drove a BMW, had the big house. We were proud of him. "Can you tell us what the withdrawal was for?" Catherine asked. Dennis hesitated. "It says here it was transferred to a business account for ranch operating expenses. Looks like equipment purchases and repairs." I hadn't purchased any equipment, hadn't authorized any major repairs. But when I called Brian that afternoon, he had an explanation ready. "Dad, remember that conversation we had about upgrading the irrigation system? You were worried about the drought. I told you I'd handle getting quotes and ordering the equipment. That's what that withdrawal was for." "Brian, I never agreed to spend $40,000 on irrigation." "Dad." His voice got softer, more careful. "The way you talk to someone who's confused. We talked about this extensively in February. You were really concerned about water conservation. Said it was keeping you up at night. I have emails." I didn't remember those emails. Didn't remember that conversation. But I'd had some trouble sleeping lately. Sometimes I'd forget where I put my keys. Normal aging stuff. Catherine said I'd been more forgetful since the heart surgery. Maybe I had agreed to it and forgotten. "Send me the paperwork," I said. "I want to see the invoices." "Of course, Dad. I'll email everything over. You know I'd never do anything without your approval. You're my father. I'm just trying to help manage things so you and Mom can enjoy retirement." The paperwork arrived. Looked legitimate. Invoices from Montana Agricultural Supply. Signed contracts. My signature at the bottom, though I didn't remember signing them. Brian said I'd sign them digitally when he was visiting at Christmas. Catherine wasn't convinced. "Something feels off," she said that night. "Brian's never been this interested in the ranch before. When he was growing up, all he wanted was to leave. Now suddenly he's managing our equipment purchases. He's trying to help," I said. But her words planted a seed of doubt. Over the next few months, more money disappeared. 20,000 here, 30,000 there. Each time, Brian had explanations. Property taxes, insurance premiums, veterinary expenses, feed costs. He'd send documentation, and it all looked official. But Catherine started keeping track in a notebook. "That's $160,000 in 6 months, Robert. That's not normal operating expenses. That's more than we spent in the last 3 years combined." I wanted to confront him. Catherine wanted to wait, investigate first. "If we're wrong, it'll destroy our relationship," she said. "If we're right, we need proof." So we started paying attention. Noticed things we'd missed before. How Brian always wanted to meet at his office in Denver instead of coming to the ranch. How he'd gotten defensive when Sarah asked if she could see the ranch's financial statements. How he'd suggested, multiple times, that maybe Catherine and I should consider assisted living. "You're both getting older," he'd said during a phone call in May. "Dad, you had a serious health scare. What if something happens and you're out there alone? There are some really nice retirement communities near Denver. You'd be closer to me. I could help with everything." We were 65 and 63. Healthy except for my heart thing, which was under control. We weren't ready for assisted living. We weren't ready to leave our home. Then came the 4th of July weekend. Every year, the whole family came to the ranch. Brian and his wife Amy, Sarah and her husband Marcus and their 2 kids. We'd barbecue, watch fireworks over the valley, sleep under the stars. It was tradition. Brian called 3 days before the weekend. "Dad, Amy and I can't make it this year. Work thing. Big client presentation I can't miss. But I need to swing by the ranch Friday evening to grab some documents from your office. Is that okay? I'll be in and out. Won't disrupt anything." Something in his tone made me suspicious. What documents? Just some ranch paperwork. Operating agreements, tax stuff. My CPA needs it for the annual filing. It's all routine. Your CPA? "Brian, we have our own accountant. Tom Henderson has done our taxes for 30 years. Pause. "Dad, I told you months ago that I was having my guy take over the ranch accounting. It's more efficient. He specializes in agricultural properties. Tom's great, but he's old school. My guy, Jonathan Price. He can save you serious money on taxes." I didn't remember agreeing to change accountants. Catherine was shaking her head emphatically across the kitchen. "I never authorized that," I said. "Dad." That careful voice again. "We talked about this. I'm worried about you. These memory lapses are getting more frequent. Maybe we should schedule an appointment with a neurologist. Early detection is important with cognitive decline." Cognitive decline. The words hit like a punch. I wasn't declining. I was 65 years old, with a sharp mind. Yes, I forgot things occasionally. Everyone does. But Brian was making it sound like I had dementia. After we hung up, Catherine and I sat in silence. "He's gaslighting you," she finally said, "making you doubt yourself. That's what abusers do. He's our son." "I know. But something is very wrong here, Robert. Very wrong." We decided to set a trap. Told Brian we'd be in Bozeman Friday night, staying at Sarah's place. Wouldn't be back until Saturday morning. The ranch would be empty when he came for his documents. Except we didn't go to Bozeman. We drove half an hour down the road, parked at our neighbor's property, and waited until dark. Then we drove back with the headlights off, parked behind the barn where Brian wouldn't see my truck, and entered the house through the basement. The lights were on in my office upstairs. We could hear voices. Brian wasn't alone. We crept up the stairs. My office door was open. Brian and a woman I'd never seen before were standing at my desk, going through files. The woman was maybe 40, blonde, professional looking. She was photographing documents with her phone. "Make sure you get the deed," Brian was saying, "and the life insurance policies. Jonathan needs everything to complete the conservatorship paperwork." Conservatorship. The word made my blood stop. "What about the sister?" the woman asked. "Will she contest it?" "Sarah won't have standing once the court declares them incompetent. She's not their financial advisor. I am. I have 3 years of documented evidence showing progressive cognitive decline, missed payments, erratic financial decisions. The works. Judge Morrison owes me a favor. This'll be rubber stamped in 2 weeks. And they'll agree to the assisted living placement?" Brian laughed. Actually, laughed. "They won't have a choice. Once I have conservatorship, I make all their decisions. Medical, financial, residential. I already have the facility picked out. Place in Colorado Springs. Costs $8,000 a month, but Medicare will cover most of it. I'll sell this ranch to the Hendersons. They've been trying to buy this land for a decade. Offered $2.5 million last year. That plus their savings and investments? I'm looking at $4 million total. Amy and I can finally pay off the house, get the beach place in California." The woman nodded, still photographing. "What about the fake transactions? If anyone audits, Jonathan's creating a paper trail showing the ranch was hemorrhaging money. Equipment failures, medical emergencies, unexpected repairs, All of it justified the withdrawals. By the time anyone questions it, Mom and Dad will be ruled incompetent and I'll have full control. No one will listen to them. They're just confused old people. I must have made a sound. Or maybe, Catherine gasped. Either way, Brian's head snapped toward the door. For 3 seconds, we all just stared at each other. His face went white. The woman dropped her phone. Then something snapped inside me. 30 years of putting out fires, pulling people from burning buildings, staying calm in emergencies. All of that flew out the window. I stepped into my own office, into my own house, and looked at my son. The boy I'd taught to ride a bike. The kid I'd stayed up with during nightmares. The young man I'd helped through college. Get out of my house. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded like something ancient and dangerous. Brian recovered quickly. Too quickly. Dad, listen. I know this looks bad, but you don't understand what you heard. We were just discussing hypothetical estate planning scenarios. I'm trying to protect you. You're trying to steal everything I've built. Trying to have me declared incompetent. Lock me away so you can sell my ranch. You're confused. You're proving my point. You're not well, Dad. You need help. Catherine stepped forward. She had her phone out, held up so Brian could see the screen. I've been recording everything for the last 5 minutes. Every single word. Brian's face changed. The mask dropped. What I saw underneath made me sick. Cold calculation, anger, no remorse, no shame, just fury at being caught. You can't use that, he said. Montana is a 2-party consent state. That recording is illegal. Wrong, Catherine said calmly. Montana allows recording in your own home without consent. I checked. The woman grabbed her purse, started backing toward the door. I don't know anything about this. I was just hired to take photos. I'm leaving. Who are you? I demanded. I'm a paralegal. Brian hired me to document the property. I didn't know anything about fraud. She was lying, but I let her go. Right then, I only cared about my son. Brian tried a different approach. Dad, please, just think about this logically. You're 65 years old. You had a major heart attack. Mom's 63. How much longer can you really work this ranch? I'm trying to make sure you're taken care of. The assisted living facility is top-notch. You'd be safe, have medical staff right there. We don't want assisted living. We want our home. You're being stubborn. This ranch is too much for you to handle. You're not capable anymore. That word, capable. Like I was a broken tool. Get out, Catherine said. Now, before we call the police. You won't call the police. I'm your son. You stopped being our son the moment you decided to steal from us, I said. You have 60 seconds to leave this property. Brian grabbed some files from the desk, moved toward the door. But at the threshold, he turned back. You'll regret this. I have power of attorney. I can freeze your accounts. I can make your life hell. You need me. No, I said. We really don't. After he left, Catherine and I sat in that office for an hour, not speaking. The betrayal was so complete, so total, I couldn't process it. This was the baby I'd held in my arms 35 years ago. The kid who'd cried when his pet rabbit died. The teenager who'd told me he wanted to make me proud. Finally, Catherine said, we need a lawyer. Tonight, we called Sarah, woke her up at 3 a.m, told her everything. She drove straight from Bozeman, arrived at dawn. Her husband Marcus came too. He's a lawyer, specializes in elder law. By the time they arrived, Catherine and I had gone through every file in my office. The pattern was clear. For 3 years, Brian had been systematically draining our accounts. The invoices were fake. Montana Agricultural Supply was a shell company registered in Wyoming, with Brian as the owner. The equipment purchases never happened. The repairs were fabricated. Every document with my signature had been forged using samples Brian had collected over the years. Worse, he'd started building a paper trail to support the conservatorship. Medical records showed I'd been evaluated by 3 different doctors for cognitive decline. I'd never seen any of those doctors. The evaluations were complete fiction. He'd created emails between himself and me discussing my confusion and memory problems. He'd falsified bank records to make it look like I'd been making erratic financial decisions. It was elaborate, sophisticated, well-planned. He'd been working on this for years. Marcus sat back after reviewing everything. This is criminal fraud, elder financial abuse, forgery, conspiracy. He could face 10 to 20 years in prison. Sarah was crying. I knew something was wrong. Last Christmas, Brian kept pulling me aside, telling me he was worried about you two, saying Dad was forgetting things. Mom was getting depressed. He asked if I'd noticed anything. I told him you both seemed fine to me. He got angry, said I wasn't paying attention, that I lived too far away to see the real problems. He was setting the stage, Marcus said. If you'd agreed that your parents were declining, he could have used you to support the conservatorship petition. When you didn't, he left you out of the plan. We filed a police report Saturday morning. Detective Linda Walsh took the statement. She was maybe 50, sharp eyes, took detailed notes. When we finished explaining, she sat back. I've seen this before. More common than you'd think. Adult children stealing from elderly parents. The ugly truth is that financial abuse is the fastest growing form of elder abuse in the country, and it's usually family members. What happens now? I asked. We'll investigate. With the recording and the documents you've provided, we have probable cause for fraud charges. I'll also contact the district attorney's office. This might be part of a larger pattern. If this Jonathan Price is involved in creating fake companies and forged documents, he could be running similar schemes with other clients. She was right. When they arrested Jonathan Price on Monday, they found evidence of 6 other cases. Elderly clients whose adult children had hired him to help embezzle and cover tracks. He'd been operating for 8 years. My case broke the whole thing open. Brian was arrested Tuesday morning at his office in Denver. Amy filed for divorce by Wednesday, claimed she had no knowledge of any fraud, though I suspect she knew everything. She got to keep the house in the divorce settlement. Brian's assets were frozen pending criminal trial. The next few months were a nightmare. Depositions, court hearings, forensic accountants going through every transaction. The DA offered Brian a plea deal. Plead guilty to fraud and conspiracy, testify against Jonathan Price, serve 5 years instead of 20. He took the plea, never apologized, never showed remorse. At the sentencing hearing, he actually argued that he'd been trying to help us, that we were too stubborn to accept we needed assistance. The judge wasn't impressed. Mr. Brennan, you exploited your parents' trust. You fabricated evidence of cognitive decline to justify stealing their life savings. You planned to have them declared incompetent and institutionalized against their will so you could sell their property. This isn't help. This is cruelty. I'm sentencing you to 8 years in state prison. 8 years. He'll be 43 when he gets out. If he serves the full term, we recovered most of the money. Not all of it. Legal fees took a chunk. Some of it Brian had already spent on his lifestyle. But we got the ranch, kept our home. That's what mattered. The harder part was emotional recovery. How do you process that your own child tried to destroy you? Sarah struggled with guilt, feeling like she should have seen the signs earlier. Catherine had nightmares for months. I found myself questioning every interaction I'd ever had with Brian, wondering when he'd stopped seeing me as his father and started seeing me as an asset to liquidate. We started going to therapy, individual and couples. Catherine found a support group for victims of elder financial abuse. Turned out there were dozens of families in Montana alone dealing with similar situations. Parents whose kids had stolen everything. Elderly people who'd been manipulated out of their savings. The stories were heartbreaking. Through the group, we learned the warning signs we'd missed. The isolated meetings away from other family. The gradual takeover of financial management. The subtle suggestions that we were declining. The gaslighting. It's a pattern. Predators use the same playbook. We also learned how to protect ourselves going forward. Revoked all powers of attorney. Set up an irrevocable trust with Sarah as successor trustee. Required dual signatures for any transaction over $10,000. Installed security cameras around the property. Changed all our passwords. We even switched banks. Started fresh somewhere Brian had never had access. Most importantly, we started having conversations we should have had years ago. With Sarah, with Marcus, with our neighbors and friends. Made sure everyone knew our wishes. If something happened to us, if we actually did develop cognitive problems, we had multiple people who'd make sure we were treated with dignity and kept in our home as long as safely possible. We also became advocates, started speaking at senior centers about financial abuse, shared our story with the local newspaper, helped the area agency on aging develop educational materials. If our nightmare could prevent even one family from going through this, it was worth the humiliation of admitting we'd been victimized by our own son. Independence Day weekend came around again. Sarah and her family came to the ranch like always. We barbecued, watched fireworks, but there was an empty space at the table, a silence where Brian's voice should have been. My grandson, he's 8 now, asked why Uncle Brian wasn't there. Sarah had told her kids a simplified version, that Uncle Brian had made bad choices and had to go away for a while, that sometimes adults make mistakes. I wanted to be angry at the question. Instead, I felt sad, because that little boy would grow up never really knowing his uncle, and Brian would miss years of his nephew's life, all because greed mattered more to him than family. That night, after everyone went to bed, Catherine and I sat on the porch like we always do, looking at the stars over the mountains, the land we'd fought to keep. "Do you think he'll ever apologize?" she asked. Really apologize? I didn't know. Maybe prison would change him. Maybe he'd realize what he'd destroyed. Or maybe he'd just spend 8 years being angry at us for reporting him. Narcissists rarely accept responsibility. I hope so, I said. For his sake, not ours. Because if he doesn't change, he'll spend the rest of his life alone. Amy's gone. We're done. Sarah won't let him near her kids. He'll have nobody. Catherine nodded. That's the real tragedy. He chose money over love. And money can't hold you when you're dying. Can't forgive you when you mess up. Can't celebrate with you when things go right. He gave up everything real for something temporary. I'd learned something important through all this. Getting old isn't what I thought it would be. I'm not frail, not incompetent, not ready to give up my independence. I'm 65 years old with arthritis in my knees and high blood pressure, sure. But I can still rope a calf, fix a tractor, manage my own finances. Being older doesn't mean being helpless. But I also learned I'm vulnerable in ways I didn't expect. Not physically, legally, financially, emotionally. The systems meant to protect elderly people can be weaponized against them by people they trust. And society's assumptions about aging make it easier. If someone says a 65-year-old is declining, people believe it. If that 65-year-old says they're fine, people wonder if they lack insight into their own condition. That's the insidious thing about elder abuse. It relies on ageism, on the assumption that old means incompetent, that needing help means needing control, that adult children naturally know better than their parents. I've spent the last year trying to change that narrative, speaking up when people make assumptions about age, pushing back when medical professionals talk over elderly patients instead of to them, encouraging other seniors to stay involved in their own financial management, to question their kids' advice, to trust their own instincts. Because here's the truth I wish I'd understood earlier. If someone truly wants to help you, they'll include you in decisions. They'll respect your autonomy. They'll support your choices even if they disagree. They won't isolate you, gaslight you, or try to override your wishes for your own good. Real help empowers. Exploitation disempowers. And if you're reading this, if you're worried about a parent or worried about yourself, here's what I learned. Trust your gut. If something feels wrong, investigate. Don't let anyone make you doubt your own judgment. Don't let fear of damaging relationships keep you from asking hard questions. A relationship built on trust can survive scrutiny. A relationship built on exploitation will fall apart the moment you push back. Get everything in writing. Every financial transaction, every agreement, every conversation about your care or your property. Document everything. Never give anyone complete control. Not your spouse, not your kids, not your financial advisor. Have checks and balances. Require dual signatures. Maintain oversight. Know your rights. Research conservatorship laws in your state. Understand what someone would need to prove to have you declared incompetent. Know that being old isn't grounds for conservatorship. Neither is being forgetful or making unconventional choices. You have the right to make your own decisions, even bad ones, as long as you have capacity. Build a support network. Don't let one person become your sole point of contact with the outside world. Stay connected to friends, neighbors, other family. Isolation makes abuse easier. And most importantly, your life doesn't end at 65, or 70, or 80. You don't suddenly become a burden or a problem to be managed. You're still a person with rights, autonomy, and value. Don't let anyone treat you otherwise. I look at my ranch now, at the mountains beyond, and I think about legacy. Brian wanted this land, wanted to turn it into money. But land isn't valuable because of what you can sell it for. It's valuable because of what it represents. Generations of work, family history, connection to place. When I die, this ranch will go to Sarah, and she'll pass it to her kids, and maybe one of them will pass it to theirs. Not because it makes financial sense, because it's home, because some things matter more than money. I've learned that the people you love most can hurt you deepest. That's a painful truth. But I've also learned that the people who truly love you will respect your strength even when you're vulnerable, will support your independence even when you need help, will stand beside you, not try to stand over you. Catherine and I are still here, still on our ranch, still watching sunsets over the Rockies, still living our lives on our terms. Brian tried to take that from us. He failed. And every morning when I wake up in my own bed, in my own house, on my own land, I'm grateful we fought back. Because surrendering to theft, dressed up as care, would have killed us faster than any nursing home ever could. We built this life. We get to decide when and how it ends. That's not stubbornness. That's dignity. And everyone deserves to keep their dignity, no matter how old they get. The ranch is ours. Our choices are ours. Our future is ours, and no one, not even our own child, has the right to take that away.